Welcome to City Cinematheque, where the art and pleasure of the movies are the subject of serious discussion. I'm your host, Jerry Carlson, and I teach film studies at the City College of the City University of New York. Today, it's our pleasure to present the 1928 masterpiece by Buster Keaton, Steamboat Bill Jr. In this one, Buster battles a giant bullying father, a giant steamboat, and no less than a hurricane. He's got quite a set of problems on his hands to solve, and he does it in that Keaton-esque way. To talk about that and much more after today's screening, we have Geoffrey O'Brien, a poet, essayist, and critic, and super Keaton fan. Now enjoy the numerous pleasures of Steamboat Bill Jr. Welcome back to City Cinematheque after this astounding experience of a hurricane and the battle against the storm by Buster Keaton. This is extraordinary cinema, extraordinary comedy. And we have a lot to talk about in the next 30 minutes, and it's always a pleasure to welcome back to City Cinematheque Geoffrey O'Brien. People know him as a poet, essayist, and critic. Most recently, he's published an essay in New York Review of Books, which was a review of two recent books about Buster Keaton, but is also a contemplation about the genius of this extraordinary American artist. I want to also mention that in 2023, we'll have a new book from Geoffrey, Arabian Nights of 1934, which is a kind of fantasia about cinema of that era. But let's go back to 1928. Okay. So 1928. This is he's made a string of very important feature films. What's this moment in Keaton's career when he's making this extraordinary film?
Well, it turned out to be a very unfortunate moment, something that didn't become altogether clear to him until they were in the middle of production. And in fact, the famous shot of the facade collapsing and the window preserving him was shot the day after he had been notified by Joe Skank, his brother-in-law and longtime business manager, that Buster Keaton Studios was going to be disbanded and that he was going to be working for MGM. Which may have seemed like a good idea at the time, but it turned out to be disastrous for Keaton because he lost all creative independence and everything that had made possible movies like Steamboat Bill and the ones that preceded it, working with his own crew, his own writers, with this kind of, I don't want to say easygoing because these movies were not easy to make, but relaxed in the sense that they all knew each other, they worked together in friendly fashion, and nothing prepared him for the bureaucratic assembly line structure of MGM, in which he was just another actor on the payroll.
Right. Well, and this is so. This comes at the end of what is his great creative decade.
Yeah, and it couldn't be more appropriate in a way, simply because it really is one of his really great movies, and it kind of sums up the many different things that he was capable of, and introduces some new elements that we haven't really seen before in such nuance.
Well, let's talk about I'll call it for the moment, the Keaton artistic toolkit. I mean, because he's a multifaceted performer. I mean, he's directing, he's writing, he's collaborating, but there's his set of skills as a storyteller are really very, very broad in that. So what are some of the things that you think of as Keaton-esque, is the simple way of?
Well, yeah, the narrative element is really, really crucial. And it's interesting because, he grew up on stage, performing with his parents, and originally, kind of a prop for his parents' vaudeville act to be hurled around the stage and so on. And he had obviously absorbed every technical performing skill that he would ever need, and many that he never even got a chance to use in film. By all accounts, he could do very, very remarkable things.
Right.
All his life. But when he got involved with films, storytelling became really important to him. And especially when he was originally working with Fatty Arbuckle on a series of shorts, which were more loosely put together.
Right.
But the minute he took full control of his filmmaking with his first shorts, the structuring becomes extremely rigorous. And he had strong views about that. I mean, he was not a theoretician, but he did emphasize that he was against the ridiculous in comedy. And I think what he meant by that was precisely the kind of thing that Max Sennett and Fatty Arbuckle were into, where it was just, anything goes and wild stuff and people getting hit on the head with no particular reason. With Buster, there has to be a reason why things are happening. He has this line in his autobiography, something like, it had to be something that you could imagine happening to someone, which, of course, I mean,
whose imagination?
It's a lot to imagine, but there is a logic. There's an emotional logic to it. People don't just suddenly do wacky things to get a quick laugh.
Right. No. All of, if you want to call them, the situations or the gags are embedded in concrete story events. You know why you've arrived at that moment, and and again, he's one of the great problem solvers.
Yeah.
But the point is, there has to be a clarity and logic about why that problem has arrived at this place at this time, and that's why he can be so fascinated with something like a steamboat or a house that's sinking, because they all present all kinds of problem-solving story situations.
Well, he was a technical genius, and in his spare time, he constructed all kinds of elaborate machinery at the studio, in his home. When he retired, he had a little train that went around the house and delivered beers to his guests, and things like this. These like real sort of Rube Goldberg contraptions. So everything you see in the movies is exactly the kind of thing that he was adept at. And of course, he had collaborators. This guy Gabe Gabori, who worked with him on all the features, I believe, and who had a lot to do with constructing those amazing sets and bringing off those, just technically amazing feats like that facade falling.
There's this kind of very interesting conversation in his works between the grand and the intimate, because you're absolutely right. I mean, you don't casually go out and recreate a hurricane.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of wind machines. That's a lot of
Yeah, they had, I think, like 6 airplane engines creating that wind. And of course, the amount of water that people are thrown into or fall into in the course of the movie is, just absolutely amazing. But yeah, the intimacy, especially in Steamboat Bill, you see a lot of that. These really fleeting things he does. The famous scene when his father takes him in to get a new hat because he's offended by the effete beret that he shows up in. And he tries on all these different hats, and each hat elicits a different personality that just flickers for a second. And, I have the impression that he's doing impressions of movie actors. I mean, probably more specifically than, is altogether clear now, but because he did that a lot. He could do impressions. That was one of the skills that he developed early on. He used to do, on stage, he used to do impressions of all the other vaudeville entertainers. He did Erich von Stroheim impressions, So there's that, and then there are the more fleeting emotional moments, and the whole thing about the stone face and so on is not at all the case, since he constantly is expressing emotion, but in ways that only a movie camera really can capture.
Well, that's. I'm glad you brought that up in that way, because it seems that his cinematic mind is so attuned to what you can do with a wide shot. So you will have him jumping across the entire steamboat. And we know he holds that wide shot and that he does not cut, because he wants to see that character is doing each one of these things. He is doing that. So he
or the moment when he clings to the tree and it flies into the air and carries him across the river, and it's all done in one shot.
Absolutely the case. So he'll use that potential of the single shot and from the distance to do that. And then I'm so glad you brought this up, that he's not the stone face. He's the person who understands what cinema can do when you do a close-up, because you don't need the exaggerated gestures. You don't need the theatrical style makeup that the Senate people would use. No, you just look in the right way, and that camera will reveal what you're doing at this almost microscopic.
Well, again, he never wants to look ridiculous.
Right, okay.
He has this inherent dignity. So even when he's falling down, as he does repeatedly in this, or falling into the river, always with, he retains that dignity. And, with the hats, which often make him look ridiculous, but he adjusts to that and strikes a pose that justifies the hat. And, of course, the father is still appalled and, and, well, for example, his first appearance in the movie, in the get-up of a
college kid,
a sophisticated college kid with the beret and the ukulele and the
striped coat,
and the loud sweater and a polka dot bow tie, I believe, and the little mustache.
The barnacle, as his father, I believe, calls it.
And that's, it's completely silly, but he has such dignity at that moment. And then when he, before he has actually met his father, but the father is watching him, he accidentally wakes up the baby in the carriage. Then he tries to soothe it by playing the ukulele and goes into this dance where he's jumping around, very much like Chaplin in the film where he's doing the satyr among the nymphs. And while the father is looking on in horror, this is my son. But it's with such joy. I mean, those few moments where he's going into this dance that's like nothing else. He never did.
Right. You also bring up, I like to bring up the father. There's this whole progression that, he's so good with story logic that as the challenges get larger, we accept the challenges as getting larger. Because if you can think of this film, there's this kind of progression from the challenge of just meeting the father and proving that you're a worthy son to, then you've got the boat and mastering this whole thing. And then all of a sudden you're visited by a hurricane. Yeah. And that's, but there's this logical succession to this of the stature and grandeur of the challenge he's going to have to meet, and he's the guy you think, is he going to be able to do this? And he keeps managing. I mean, we see his fallibilities early, but then he keeps coming back. He keeps coming back and problem solving, and then when the urgency is there, and you get the famous ticking clock of when the dad's, sinking.
Yeah, which is straight out of D.W. Griffith. Buster to the rescue, while meanwhile he's trying to rescue Kitty from the house, which is floating down the river.
So this brings up this really interesting question, about his persona and about him. He is an artist, of this milieu he comes out of. Certainly vaudeville and the performance, but also the dominance of melodrama as a genre. How do you see him, responding, to that? And we just brought up Griffith. I mean, the great master of.
Oh well, he saw all these movies and understood them completely. And is able, when he wants to, I mean, Our Hospitality begins with a melodramatic scene that's played completely straight.
Right, exactly.
In which Keaton's father is killed as part of a feud, which then, kicks off the whole storyline. And that's filmed, it could be the opening scene of an absolutely straight melodrama. So when he's doing that, well, exactly, when the father is in the jail, which is sinking, there's no comedy there.
Right.
At that moment, you're just concerned, what's going to happen? How's he going to rescue him? And, the general, of course, is very much, for much of the time, played straight. And, Steamboat Bill, it manages to balance that.
Well, yeah, that's
in a way that that's why I think it's really one of his best films, because there's a kind of evenness about it. You're never torn from one mood to another, and yet the moods do shift considerably. And there is a kind of Romeo and Juliet thing going, like that whole middle section.
Yeah.
When he has to sneak out and go to the other boat to meet Kitty, which of course goes awry in a very funny way, but the whole scene where his father is trying to keep an eye on him with the peanut shells on the floor and everything, but it still does have that feeling of, he really loves her, he really wants, and there's this strong romantic feeling, which is not overdone and not done in a coy or exaggerated way at all.
No, and the actress playing in this particular one, I mean, she's absolutely charming and effervescent, and we take it for the weight that it is to be genuine, kind of youthful attraction, and there's the underlying structure here that goes, as you and I both know, all the way back through Shakespeare, back to Greco-Roman, of the young couple who are facing an older generation who just doesn't understand them, and there's all these challenges set up, and they've got to come to some kind of, for them to be reunited, they've also, solving problems brought up, say, by a hurricane, but there also has to be this reconciliation with the other generation in some way, and that ends up he gives us that perfectly balanced frame.
And the beauty is that he's inventing it.
Yes.
Because he didn't know from Greco-Roman drama, it's safe to say, or I doubt that Shakespeare intruded much on his thoughts. So he's working with writers.
Exactly.
And picking up ideas all over the place and, fashioning everything in this very fresh way. And, there are very few film. Well, I mean, there are very few films on this level in the first place, but in terms of comedy,
right?
To be able to look at this film made in 1928 and everything is fresh about it. It's just not, the way the scenes work, the way the rhythm of it works. There's just this elegance and real beauty about the. I mean, well, that scene, for example, where he sneaks on the other boat.
Right.
And the father is outside, so he has to crouch down and sneak into the salon where he's supposed to meet Kitty. And while he's crouched there, the ship's officer sees him there and pushes him out, and he knocks into the father, who falls into the river. And then the other guy's going to push Buster in the river, except he steps aside, so the other guy goes in the river. And then a second officer comes out, at which point Buster just kind of, this look of just resignation, and he just jumps in the river.
Absolutely.
Like, okay, you got me.
Yeah. So let's go in a direction that many others have gone in this direction, but I'm interested in your thoughts about it, and that is, I don't want to say Chaplin versus Keaton, but Chaplin and Keaton. They're clearly both major artists in film comedy. They thought, they've been called, the great clowns, the great silent clowns, etc. But how do you see how Keaton, Keaton and Chaplin are very different as artists, and how do you?
Well, I mean, Chaplin clearly had more grand ideas about what he was aspiring to, and progressively grander as he went on. Right. Keaton does not seem to have been that sort of person.
Right.
His ambitions were much more focused on tasks, really.
Okay.
I mean, once he got hold of a story and a setting, it was all about, how are we going to do this? How are we going to manage this? And he's conceiving, these very difficult things, and figuring out how to make that happen on screen. Whereas, Chaplin had a message for the world.
Okay.
Keaton, I don't know what the message of Keaton's movies is beyond, wow, look at what is possible. Look at what you can do.
Well, and there's a way in which, he really is someone who thinks cinematically. I mean, it's one of the things that people, think about the arts as a, is how is this person using their selected medium? And are they, sometimes we can mix media and all of that. And he is somebody who says, okay, we're in this situation. What can we do with this cinematically? But he's so rich, in invention, and sometimes the decision is that wide shot to show some incredibly intricate task. But something else, like the example you just gave, it can be the single shot just with the doorway and then working out a complete blocking there. But also just with this elegance that we keep seeing people going in the water from the door, from the doorway.
And of course, I mean, we should talk a little bit about the famous gag, which really was, you have the facade of the building falling and the window just narrowly permits him to survive. And this was, of course, a really dangerous shot. And, a lot has been written about this, surmising that, well, maybe he had a death wish because of what was going on with his business. But, I mean, he was not given to, but he did say something like, I must have been mad at the time to do that.
Okay.
And supposedly half the crew had their eyes closed because they were so scared. But it's, you look at, I mean, this is, of course, something he had done before on a smaller scale.
Right.
It was a favorite idea of his, this. But here it's epic.
Right. No.
It's this enormous facade, and it's all in one shot, and you just see him standing there, like, and you could look at that forever and wonder what was that like to be there, and just sort of hope that you got the measurements right. No, he had like 2 inches to spare on either side.
Right. Well, actually, you brought up a word that I think is key to so many of the pleasures that we get from these films, and that is wonder. Whether it be, you're just wondering how skilled can somebody be to make those leaps and to do those things in that sequence, or it can be one of these great gags like the one you've talked about. I mean, when he's holding onto the tree.
Yeah.
And you have this single shot, and you're going, oh my! I've never seen anything like that before. And
it's not being done with superimpositions or anything like that. They've got a crane attached to the tree, and he's being carried over the river and then dropped in the river.
Well, you know, and he is interested in creating that pleasure for the spectator. You know, that
To make it clear that this is in fact happening.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. And to have this sense that, you know, I can pass on this sense of wonder. That is one of the things that our storytelling can do, is he give you that pleasure. And he's so endlessly inventive about the ways he does that.
Well, what I love also is that, you know, he always does this. There's never the sense of bravado. It's not Douglas Fairbanks kind of, look what I just did. He just does it as if it were kind of an afterthought, you know, and does some
and walks away.
Deft thing. Yeah.
Yeah. No, okay, I solved that, so let's move on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not going to taking the bows in that Fairbanks kind of way.
No, I mean, and if he does that ever, then it's usually a prelude to some sort of
disaster.
I mean, like in 1 week where they think everything is fine because the train missed their house, and they're saying, "Oh, man, what a relief!" And then the other train.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a setup. I mean, if you get too cocky, you will be punished for that, and that's part of his, that's kind of his storytelling.
There's also a great gag that doesn't involve Buster, just a prop gag, where he knocks the lifesaver off the boat into the water and it immediately sinks, and that's early on.
Absolutely,
it's just like kind of like, oh.
There's going to be some problems here.
I can't count on that.
Yeah. But again, the films are woven so tightly in that kind of way, because then the lifesaver shows up again in the last surprise shot of why did he jump in the water this time?
To get the minister.
To get the minister. So I think, Geoffrey, we're going to have to end laughing because I think that's one of the great virtues of being able to share a film like this on that. So let me talk to our viewers just for a second. So if you've enjoyed Buster Keaton and you enjoy watching films, please continue to visit us here at City Cinematheque. How do you find out about that? Not a surprise, you visit our website. You visit www.tv.cuny.edu. There you'll find the schedule for City Cinematheque, and you'll find the full 24-time schedule, 24x7 that is, schedule for City University Television, CUNY TV. So please visit www.tv.cuny.edu. Geoffrey, always a pleasure to have you here.
Great to be here.
And thanks for bringing your love of Keaton and sharing it with us, as well as your vast knowledge of it. But our admiration, I think we have sufficiently communicated. Great.
Thanks.
And thank you for joining us today as we screened Keaton and talked about Keaton. And please join us in the future as we continue to stroll through the archives of film history. It's bye for now.